In this video, we're going to have a look at how we can install, set up, configure, and use a form of source version control within Android Studio. There'll be two parts to this. So the first video is going to look very much at one-off activities about configuration, installation, that type of stuff. The second video will then look at more day-to-day matters about how we can use SVNs, a particular version we'll be using, how we can use source control on a day-to-day basis to share, to update, to collaborate in terms of the software that we create. So just by way of a little bit of background or context, most software you're developing nowadays, you will use a form of source control along with it. Why do we do this? Multiple reasons. It gives teams an easy and a capable means of collaborating together, so that I can write some code, I can integrate it and test it against your code, I can then push it up and share it. That can be brought down, integrated in, and so on and so forth. So it's a very good collaborative tool. Beyond this, you also get a tool that gives you backups. You can revert back to previous versions, for example, to work out, okay, what went wrong if there's now a nasty bug being introduced. So it's a very powerful, very capable way of developing software. There's one other advantage, which is maybe a little bit more specific to me and my role in the module. Using source control, I can access a lot of metrics. I can get to see who has done what, who's been committing with what frequency against which files, how much code, that type of stuff. So it gives me a very good audit trail that I can use to understand dynamics and processes and things like that. Okay, so we're going to have a look at setting things up under Android Studio. So the first thing to say is that there are different types of source control that can be used. Probably the most common one nowadays, and if you could pick any of them, one I would recommend would be Git. Unfortunately, it's not the one we're going to be using on this project. So within the school, we do actually have a facility. You can create and host your own Git projects, and you should do that. Because I have a need to retain all of these projects and to be able, for example, to share them with an external examiner and to get a control over of looking at an audit trail, if you like. The only servers we have within the school at the minute that support that are subversion-based servers, or SVN. So the particular form of source control we'll be using in this module will be SVN. It's much the same as Git in terms of how it works and the functionality. Git has a few other sort of nice aspects. It is a little bit more broadly used at the minute. But SVN, if you learn that, moving to Git is a very straightforward translation. So things we have to do then. So as part of setup, we're going to assume that we have Android Studio. And you'll see there we have a VCS, a version control system software, whatever you want to call it, menu. Now, at the very start, your menu probably will look different to this. You probably will have an enable version control option at the very top of it, but we'll get onto that in a second. Now, out of the box, Android Studio, yes, it has support or some support for version control, but for a lot of these things, you actually have to install an underlying, for example, in this case, SVN toolkit that Android Studio can use. So we're going to install SVN or a set of SVN tools and then to link them in to Android Studio so it uses those tools. And that's a fairly common thing to do within IDEs. IDEs will support these things, but you need to link them in either with the Git tools or SVN tools. They need to be installed first of all. So there are lots of different SVN and Git and other versions of it that we could use. So we're using SVN. On the PC, probably the best free one is Tortoise SVN. And that's the one I'm going to assume that you'll be using. If you're running on a Mac, if you have a different range available there, so things like SVNX, Rapid SVN, Smart SVN, whatever sort of one sort of best appeals to you. But you want to download one, make it free, and then get that installed. Now, there's a little bit of an aside here. So Tortoise SVN, sure, very popular one on Windows-based PCs. Most recent version at the minute is 1.9.2, so SVN 1.9. Unfortunately, for the version of Android Studio that I'm using, so it'd be at 1.3, 1.4, something like that, they work better with version 1.8 of SVN. So SVN changes in terms of its protocols and things like that. So Android Studio at the point of recording this video works best with 1.8. And that's going to change over time, so you always want to sort of do a quick check to see if this is still the case. So we could download 1.9.2, it'll grumble slightly in installation, but let's just make it clean. So if you do a Google for Tortoise, 1.8.12 is sort of the latest version of 1.8 that Tortoise SVN had. And you can then sort of click through to that, and it'll give you a chance to download it from SourceForge. Now, admittedly, the big download button here, even though we Googled 1.8.12, will download you the most recent 1.9 version. But if you scroll on down, you'll get to see links through to the 64-bit or the 34 or 32-bit version. So download that. I downloaded the 1.8.12, and you want to install that. So whenever it installs, okay, you'll look slightly different than mine. I already have it installed, so I'm getting a modify, repair, remove screen, but you'll get something similar to this. It's going to ask you which components you want to install. Now, importantly, there'll be a command line element, which by default in 1.8.12 is turned off. It's not available. You want to click on it and you want to say, yes, we want that available, because we want the command line tools installed, because that's what we're going to point Android Studio to get them to use. Anyway, so you can install that. Make sure you have the tools, the command line tools included in. Now, at this point, we've downloaded our SVN toolset. So Tortoise is the one we're using, or whatever one you want to use. We've got it installed. Good. The next step is to link Android Studio in with it to say that, okay, if you want to use SVN, here's where you'll find the tools you can execute. How do you do this? Well, under the File menu, inside Settings, there is a range of options here. One of them is going to be version control. If you click version control, there's actually going to be a number of things we'll tweak in here, but there's only one thing we're interested in tweaking at this point in time. Down to Subversion, and you'll see there's a use command line client. So that's what we want to do. It's the command line version we want to use. And normally you're pointing to an svn.exe. That's what it assumes by default. You've got to tell it whereabouts you installed SVN2. So this will depend on your machine, the thing you've downloaded, where it got installed into. For Tortoise SVN, it's in program files, Tortoise SVN, there's a bin directory, and inside that you have svn.exe. So by linking this in, I basically told Android Studio that if you want to execute an SVN command, go to the command, the client version I have installed and execute that. So that's going to integrate in this functionality. One other thing we want to do then is under version control. So like I said, your menu probably will look a bit different than this. You're likely to have enable version control integration as your first item if it hasn't yet been integrated. So click on that. It'll bring up a menu asking, okay, what type of version control do you want to integrate into Android Studio? Click on Subversion, do OK. It might take a little bit of time. You may have a message down in the bottom of the screen about indexing or things like that. Just let that complete. But at that point then, it will actually be integrated in. We can test it, and we should test it. So let's do a quick test. So under version control, you should then see this full menu appearing when it's integrated in. If you go down to Browse version control at the bottom and Browse Subversion repository and click on that, you'll have a window appear down at the bottom. Now, I already have added a repository. So initially, when you do this, it's going to be blank, but you click on the plus. It asks you for the URL that you want to add in. So each team will be sent out your project folder for this. So it could be group 32. So that will be sent out to you in an email. Each person will have their own individual password, but you type in the URL, you do OK. it'll get a username and password, enter those things in, and you will then see it appearing here as a repository. Now, in my one, there's a couple of things which are committed into it, but the first time you add it, it's going to be blank. It can be blank, it depends. So if one member of the team actually shares the project, you might actually see it whenever you get to add it in, just depending on how you do it. But add the thing in, ask you for a password. If it accepts it and it appears down here, you know that yes, you're connecting to your repository and it's linked into Android Studio and it's working fine with the command line tools. So that's a good mark of progress. Now, all members of the team need to do that to get that tool set installed, to get it linked in, and just do a check here to make sure that it's working okay. What remains now in this particular video here, I want to talk about, again, these are one-off activities, but we want to share the initial project across the team. So this is going to split up into a couple of different aspects. One member of the team is going to notionally seed the project. So they're going to create an empty project, or their starting project, or a starting point, whatever you have, and they're then going to share that up onto the SVN server. All of the other team members, when they do that, are then going to open from the SVN server that particular project. And when we've done that, we'll have one project up in SVN that all of the team members are accessing and using. And that's our endpoint. That'll be the end of the one-off costs. So let's see how we can do this here. So just to remember, we want one member of the team to do this. So only one member of the team must do this. The other team members, you're listening to later on in this video for the other steps. So I'm assuming we'll have a team member that will, let's say we want a starting project. So it could be the Gauge example I send out, or I'm just going to create a new project here. So I'm going to call it my super game for sake of argument. And I will do next in that. I'll just use the defaults here for how the thing does. Blank activity. Actually, let's go for floating activity. Why not? We'll do next. And I'm going to call it my super game as the activity name. And we'll finish that. So it's going to create a new project. And I suppose what we're illustrating here is that seeding process of having a starting point for going. Now I'm just going to, the Gauge is the other one that's open, I'm just going to close that down. And there I have my, my starting project. That's the one I want to initially share. And you can see under here, enable version control integration. So I'm going to click on this. I'm going to associate it with Subversion. And we'll do OK on that particular one. Now, and you can see the process is running there as it goes through and does that association with it. So this is the project, my starting project, the one I want to share to push it out. Just as in a little aside here, there's a few things that we want to do. If you have installed, let's say 1.9 or an older or more recent version of Android, you might see a message up here sort of saying, oh, that version of, not of Android, of SVN. The version of SVN you've installed isn't compatible with this here. If you don't see any message, it means it is compatible. It seems to be fine. Now, before we share things, I just want to do, and you should do the same too, just click on Make Project. Now, the reason we do that, and if I maybe bring up here, so this was my super game. So if we have a look inside that folder, there's a lot of files that are associated with the thing that I have created. Some of the files I want to share, and some of them I don't want to share. So by actually making the project, I make sure that I build all of the files that get to be associated with the project. So let's remember to do that. First of all, just get the thing built. I mean, you don't have to deploy it, just build it. That's going to be enough to create all of the files that are associated with the project. Now, going back to this here. So in this one here, I have a number of directories. So for example, there's a build directory associated with it. Now, I'm not particularly interested in sharing that particular directory. to configure SVN so that there are some files that I will share and there's other files that I won't share. Sorry, I just want to try to run this. I'm not going to do that. So how can we do this here? Under File, I want to go down to Settings again. And inside Settings, I want to go down to Version Control. And you'll see there is an Ignored Files option in this. And this is where I can say I want to ignore certain files. I don't want to share those up onto the server. So there's a few things we want to share. So things like workspace, which are how I've configured my own workspace. I'm not interested in sharing that. I want to keep that to me. And I don't want to be messing up other people's by sharing that. When we build the project, we get a lot of compiled class files. We'll get an APK file we can push up and install on the device. We don't want to share those. These are all things which are produced from the source code when it's built. The types of things we do want to share are some of the key Gradle files or Java files or resources, things like that. So I'm going to go through a few things here. So if you click on the plus over there, you can add things into the ignored list. I can ignore a specific file, I can ignore all files under a directory, or I can ignore a pattern. So I'll go through a few of these here to add them in. So I'm going to ignore all files under, now it'll open up and it'll tell us the default one. So my Gradle folder is one that is involved with building the thing, but it's generated automatically. So I'm going to ignore anything in Gradle. I do OK. I'm going to ignore, again, another directory, anything that is in build, because the build folder, whenever you hit build, it auto-generates the stuff in there. I don't need to share that. It's just going to clog things up. So I ignore anything in build. There's actually a second build folder under app. We'll have a build folder. So libraries and source code, we want to share those, but I don't want to share the build of the app. So I add that in. There's one other one. Now, these are the ones I generally add it. There probably is an ideal list, but these ones work for me, but you can tweak about things if you want. So the idea one, there's a number of different things in this here. Copyright never seems to have much, but libraries you probably don't want to share. And there's one specific file. So if you do, so what I clicked on there was to ignore a specific file. And inside your project, so we can close these things down here just to get a bit of a feel. So my game, you'll see there's local.properties, and the local properties of the thing. I don't want to share that. Add it in. And the final thing, just to use all of them, ignore all matching files. I want to ignore anything that is an IWS file. So it's an Android Studio when it contains the user settings. So I do apply, and we'll do OK. So just before I do OK here, just to recap the reason, we don't want to share everything. Inside version control, ignored files, for the current project, I can say the things I don't want to share, and I need to set up this list just to do it. So I'm going to do OK. Now that has set up or defined the things that I don't want, and then everything else I'm saying I do want to share. So let's do that sharing process then. So under version control, if we went down to import into version control, so this project at the minute isn't yet in version control. I've created it. I've done a bit of configuration on the things I do want to add and don't want to add. The next step actually is to say, let's add it into version control. Let's push it up onto our SVN server. So we're going into import into version control. You might think there's import into subversion. It's the share project is the option that we want to do. So we want to share our project. So I'm going to click on that. And it's going to bring up a dialog where it's asking me, well, where do you want to share the project? And if you've already added in your group's repository, then that's going to appear. So you can see here it's asking me to type in my password. But we want to add it in effectively to the group repository. So I'm clicking there on the group repository. That's going to be the one or the directory heading I want to add it in. You can do new remote folder. You don't need to do that there. It's going to create it as my super game is the name of this project, so it'll be the default folder that's added into it. Some things down at the bottom about how we actually share it. For SVN, it operates on sort of a tree-like structure. So your main trunk is where your stable, working, proper version of the code is. You can branch from that trunk if you want to have different versions which do different things and then merge them back in. So it's useful enough to go to the default option for creating tags and branches and all of the other good SVN stuff. So we do share at this point. It's going to ask me then for the what version of SVN do I want to use. So it's 1.8 is what I've used. It's the most recent one that this supports. So again, 1.8 is what I'll select, and I'll do OK. And as then you say, creating remote folder, checking in. So it's setting things up on the SVN server, on the server side. Now, this is an important message here. So to complete the share operation, commit it in. So even though we said we want to share it, what it has done initially is just created some space and a structure on the SVN server. We haven't actually pushed up any of our Java code yet. We can verify this if we were to browse to our repository now. You may sometimes need to refresh it, but there you can see we have the super game now appearing. And inside that we've got branches, tags and trunks as the things that have been added in. And they'll be empty at the minute because we haven't committed anything to it. So we shared it. The final thing, this is what the one person in the team's doing to complete the process of sharing, we have to commit. Commit, we'll talk a little bit more about this in the second video. It's a way where we can make some changes, and if we're happy that they're working fine, we want to actually share them with the rest of the team. We commit the changes, we push them up, and that's how it gets shared. So I do commit changes, and I get a fairly large dialog that is appearing, and it tells me all of the things that it's going to commit. So because this is the first time we've done it, there's actually a load of stuff. So you can see all of the different files that are going to be pushed up. So we've got our Java files, some XML files, some images, we're pushing up our test files as well, and all of the other stuff in terms of building it. Some of these you probably don't need to share, but you might as well do it. It's always a good idea to add in a message at the bottom. So I'm saying there that my initials, so anybody looking at the log, they can see this was the initial commit. So I then click on, there's a few other things just before I do that. You can see before commit, you can do a number of things. These can be quite optional, so are useful. Reformat code or rearrange code, optimize imports, perform code analysis, check the to-do list, clean things up, or whatever. So in Android Studio, you can set up formatting rules. And if you wanted to make sure that everybody that is committing code adheres to the same formatting rules, you could turn that on. I'm just going to turn these off, but again, you can tweak these to see how you want the thing to evolve. I'm just going to keep on checking any of the to-do comments. So if you use to-dos, these are things you can put in as reminders to make sure you've done them. And it's useful to have a check on those just before you commit in case you've forgotten to do something. So then I'm happy. That's all the things I want to push up. I'm happy with the actions I want to tag. So I'm going to commit it. And down at the bottom, we've got performing the VCS commit. So this is the thing that will go through and will add all of these different files up onto the SVN server. Depending on how much stuff you need to do, depending on the speed of the internet connection, things like that, it can be a short process, it can be a long process, also depends how much load the school server is on. So one process is running. It normally doesn't take too long, so it's taking a wee bit longer here, but we'll let it complete. One thing to be slightly cautious of in terms of commits, because for checking out projects, audio, it is very easy to add many megabytes of audio to your project, which well, it can sort of slow down checkout times and things like that. So just be a little bit cautious about the volume of stuff that you're pushing up. Anyway, 70 files committed. So these things are now all available on our SVN repository. We could browse it, and if we were to go down into it this time, need to refresh the thing into the trunk. Well, actually it will appear there eventually. You can get to see all of the stuff that is now up on our school server. So this one person has seeded the project and has pushed it up onto the server. Well done, their job is done. They have now shared the project. What comes next then is this is what every other member of the team has to do. They have to check their initial copy out from the server. So let's do this one here. So every other team member must do this here. It's going to be a little bit more complicated here. So I'm going to go File, I'm going to do New, and I'm going to do Project from Version Control. So I want to create just not a new project here, but I want to check something out from Subversion. That's the one we're using. So I click on that. It brings me up my Subversion list. So because I've already added in my one and you'll have added in your one, you can expand this. You'll get to see the different ones that are there. Now, here's where there's going to be a little bit of something you don't want to be tripped up on. It might be natural to go, there's my game, I'm going to check this out. That won't work as well. Remember, inside this folder, we might have different versions of our super game. So we need to say which version we want to check out. Trunk, normally the trunk is the solid working copy. It's the most recent copy that everybody's working on that is solid, is dependable. So what we do want to check out is the trunk from my super game. There'll be no branches, we haven't added them in. But you have to remember, click on the trunk, that's the version, the thing you want to check out. So I'm going to do checkout then, and it's going to ask me, okay, the trunk's on the server, I need to check out a copy on my own computer. Where am I going to put it? And now you should, when checking it out, so it's called My Super Game, so you should put it in a folder that matches the name of whatever you're doing. Because I'm trying to simulate two things here. I'm trying to simulate effectively two different users. I'm going to check this out to a different directory name. So I'll have one directory holding the version used by one user, I'll have one directory holding the version used by another user. I'm only doing this for the purpose of a demo so I can show two different copies of it. You'll only have one in your computer and it should have a sensible name. So I'm going to do new folder, My Super Game 2. This is my second person, and that's where I'm going to say I want to check the thing out into. I'll do OK. And it'll tell me some things there. It's saying, okay, so My Super Game 2, I'm going to check out within that My Super Game. So this is just because I'm doing it as a part of a demo. But you would have normally picked, say, your Android Studio projects, and it would be My Super Game as the one that came out. So we do OK. It asked me again about the format, the working format, so 1.8, just stick with that. We do OK. And again, you'll have checking out files then appearing at the bottom of the screen. So it's going and checking out from the online server. So I'm going to open up a new window so I can have both, if you like, user 1 and user 2, both of them sort of sitting alongside one another. And I'll do that by way of illustrating in the next video how we can have two users making different changes. Now this is important, you'll get this. So schedule for addition. We checked it out. And it's saying, do you want to schedule the following file? So when we checked the project out, it created a new project locally. And here it is detected and is sitting saying that actually, so I've created a new project. I've checked some things out. Here's a file that I've created. Do I want to add it in to the subversion? I'm going to say no. So basically click no for any of these things. And again, you'll have another one there. So there's the libraries thing. If you remember, we tried to ignore that. So remember, don't ask again. I don't want to add in anything that I haven't explicitly said that I want to add in. Okay, so now this is checked out. If I go to my project, I can see I have all of the different things that came out from it. We're nearly done, very, very nearly done. So every other team member will have checked it out. They will have answered the question saying, no, we don't want to add these things in because we want to only push up into the repository or source code or Java files or images, the essential stuff. There's one final step that we have to do. and that is update the ignore list for this particular project. So if you remember back when the first person was doing it, they had to define an ignore list and then they shared. We check it out. We'll get a half populated ignore list. We just want to tweak it slightly to make it perfect. And you can see some things here, and in the next talk we'll talk about color coding. So you'll notice down here we have something that's actually in brown for local properties. The local properties in brown means that, hold on, this is a new file, it's not versioned under source control, maybe it should be. In this case we don't want it to be. So we're going to File, down to Settings, down to Version Control, and we go to our ignored file. Now, for the first user, whenever he or she went here, there was only the IWS and XML workspace file. This one here, it's done a bit better. It's managed to add in the Gradle files because they're generated automatically. It's added in a bunch of the build stuff, again, because they're generated automatically. We just want to fill out, to complete the list with the other stuff that we added in initially. So we can do, it's exactly the same as the other one. So we want to add in, so it's My Super Game or Gradle. We don't want to add that. We'll do OK. Oh, in fact, that was actually already added in. And what one was it? It was the ideas libraries. Can we bother sharing those? So we add those ones in. Any other ones that we had within this here? Well, when you build it, you'll get a build. So you'll see down here we had a build directory. And whenever you build this here, you'll have a build directory available too. You probably want to ignore that as well. Don't want to push those things up. And I think the last one was any IWS file to add in. So just as a recap, the things that we want to ignore that we set up in the first project were the .gradle directory, were the build and the app build directory, were the libraries within the ideas folder, were the local.properties. I don't believe in fact I haven't added it in. Let me just add in specific file. So this was local.properties. So I'm adding that in, and then any IWS file. So I've specified this. You'll see over here it's brown at the minute. I'm going to do apply and do OK. And then this changes back to sort of a light green color. So it's now been added to the ignore list. So anytime I make changes to this one and try to commit them up, it's not going to bother me about trying to store the local properties file. Okay, we covered quite a lot, and it is something that all of the team members will have to do by way of getting this set up. So it's worthwhile doing this, going through the steps. Again, for the second person, when you've checked it out, usual stuff, you can go to your browse, you can check that things are there, you can build this, make sure that the thing runs, just double check that it's okay. Everybody needs to do this here, except for the second stage where one person does the initial seeding and the rest then check it out. That's all I'm going to cover in this particular talk. It's gone on more than long enough. In the next one, we'll have a look at the day-to-day operations that we'll do under source control. And that'll be a lot more familiar then, because it's not going to be a one-off or every once in a while. This will be more of a day-to-day process.